In 2024, college football will sport a new look. New teams will occupy 2 Power 5 conferences, and we will witness our first ever 12-team college football playoff. Super conferences are slowly forming. We do not believe that the moves for 2024 are the end-all be-all. So Ed, what are your thoughts on the future of conference realignment?
Hey, I'm a big fan of it. I like how they brought in Texas and Oklahoma into the SEC, right? For the ACC, I'm looking who can they add to compete with the SEC right now. We saw the Big Ten. They added USC, and they also added UCLA. So I don't know who's out there right now that they could add. We're going to have 3 or 4 super conferences, and then the trickle effect is that we're going to have like 3 or 4 smaller super conferences where the Conference USA, the AAC, all these smaller conferences, the Sun Belt, they're going to combine into making their smaller conferences bigger to compete with the 3 or 4 super conferences. So, we have the ACC, the SEC, and the Big Ten already adding their folks. I think the ACC is next. Like I said, I don't know who they could add right away to give them those 2 teams to start competing. But I like it. It's going to bring some matchups we haven't seen in years. So I'm looking forward to it. I know a couple years ago, they were flirting around with Notre Dame joining the ACC for football purposes only. Maybe that could be a move that they could establish right away.
Yeah, so what you didn't mention was the Big 12 already adding 4 teams to their conference, which that starts this year, right? With UCF, Cincinnati, BYU, and Houston. And I think that happened because immediately following the news that Texas and OU were going to leave to go to the SEC, the commissioner at that time, he was like, hey, you got to think these guys, all these athletic directors and commissioners, they looking around the league, they want to be the best, right? Everybody wants to be the best. So they said, okay, if they're going to take our cash cows, because which, Texas and OU were, to kind of mitigate that cost, hey, we're going to add 4 teams. And, I think it's good. I think it's good for college football. I like it. But I do see more teams becoming super conferences, right? So I can see somewhere down the line where the Big 12 and the Pac-12 merge, right? Just because, proximity of where the schools are in relation to each other. And as far as the ACC goes, I can see the ACC actually breaking up and, half of them joining the SEC and the other half joining the Big 10. Again, proximity, right? Travel for schools and playing teams like that. So, I like it. I like it for the sport. But I do see that happening.
Yeah, and I agree with you, AB, because that's kind of like where I'm going as well. The like they said, the biggest domino to fall is Notre Dame, right? Because Notre Dame is stuck between the Big Ten and the ACC, right? Geographic wise, Big Ten, right? All the teams are right there; they're there. But the ACC gives them I would say, a more winnable schedule, right? So that's going to be the first domino to fall. It's got to be Notre Dame. Then after that, I think it's the Big 12. The Big 12 is looking at rating the Pac-12. You got to think about teams like Colorado, Utah, Arizona State, Arizona, Oregon, Washington, right? Those are teams I think that the Big 12 can pick up and bring it to their conference, and there's no, it's not going to hurt anybody. I think the Pac-12 is the conference that's going to end up kind of subsiding, right? Because they're already losing their 2 bell cows in UCLA and USC next year, and I just think that's the place that's going to be rated the most. But the Pac-12 is trying to add to their thing as well. They're looking at adding San Diego State and SMU to the Pac-12 because they want that Dallas market, right? So, it's going to be a lot of moving and shaking.
I think Notre Dame is going to end up going to the Big Ten because USC going to the Big Ten, and that Notre Dame USC rivalry, it makes sense for them to go to the Big Ten. and I think you're on the money there. If the SEC can get Florida State and Miami to join, that's two huge markets, and it brings back the Florida Cup. Because you're going to have Florida in there.
He was talking about the ACC breaking up and Florida State, Miami, Clemson joining the SEC, right? You got to look at, right, with Texas A&M, with Texas joining the SEC, Texas A&M did not want Texas to join the SEC. And I think it'll be the same with South Carolina with Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
So and the same with Florida. That's the reason Miami and Florida State didn't join in the 90s, because Florida didn't want them there. Maybe their mindsets will change. I know it's all about the money, right? You hear about these big billion-dollar contracts they're getting with these TV companies, but you also got to look at it. It's a thing of pride to say, "Hey, we're the top South Carolina school in the SEC." I don't know if that's going to happen. I think that's going to be the biggest sticking point,
because it directly affects their recruiting in those states. You know what I'm saying? Like right now, they boast that in Texas we're the only SEC team, and that was their maybe their best in the best conference. Here it is, right? Come to Texas A&M.
Yeah. They use that as a selling tool. Hey, you can stay home and you can still play in the SEC, right? That option is no longer viable because Texas now will be joining SEC in 2024, so they can't use that as a pitch no more in recruiting.
No, and I think Texas and Oklahoma they will pull a lot more recruits into those two schools away from Texas A&M, and we can see A&M kind of dwindling down. Those two schools are going to pull more recruits than Texas A&M. It's crazy to think. A couple years ago we were just thinking about regions, right? The SEC. The ACC were all kind of on the East. They disbanded the Big East and put them all in different conferences. The Big Ten is the Midwest and the Northern states. And then you have the Pac-12. But now we got West Coast teams coming all the way to the East Coast to play football games. And it's for the money.
I think that's going to be crazy, man. You got to think about these kids that go to USC and UCLA. If they got to go to Ohio State to play a game, think about the travel time and all that stuff that goes into it, right? That's huge.
I think that is something they have looked into already. And it's not only with football, it happens every year, right? USC goes to Notre Dame goes to USC, right, every year, right? So I don't think the football aspect is that bad. It's going to be the other sports, like the basketball, the baseball. I think those are the ones that's going to be affected more than the football. The only move I saw, they was talking about Gonzaga joining the Big 12.
Big 12.
They would be basketball only.
Basketball only. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I saw, from the trickle effect was, we already know the Big 12 added those, and those are four solid teams. Two of those teams have been in like top 25s. Houston, UCF had the undefeated season, and we saw Cincinnati make it to the Final Four in the playoffs, right? So they added Charlotte 49ers, FAU, the North Texas Mean Green, and Rice. So I think UAB Blazers also. Mm-hmm. It's going to be good for some of these smaller schools to have some upside and play a bigger market. Instead of, because North Texas, what is their schedule looking like? And now they're gonna jump into a bigger market and play. So it's gonna help some of these smaller schools grow. And you never know, man. We can see one of these smaller schools take down one of these Power 5 conferences teams. So,
all right, man. Well, that does it for this episode of the Unbiased Room. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Take care.
Peace.